There is a quiet truth we all carry but rarely name. The ground beneath us is never still, even in moments when we feel unmoving. When we press our feet into the soil and imagine permanence, the earth is humming, shifting, breathing in silence. Beneath us, deep below the roots of mountains, below the oceans and the continents we call home, fire stirs. It waits, it travels, it whispers through the fractures of stone. Eruptions are not simply violence, they are memory. They are the Earth's own language, the way our planet tells its long story of creation and change. To watch fire rise from the ground is to witness time itself breaking open, reminding us that nothing is as still as it seems. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, we will listen to this story together. We will follow the molten heartbeat of our world, not in fear, but in wonder. Because when the earth awakens, it is not to destroy us, it is to remind us that we, too, are made of restless fire. Before we begin, take a breath. Let yourself settle into the comfort of this moment. What you are about to hear is not a lecture, but a lullaby of science and story, an invitation to let curiosity guide you into sleep. If this journey speaks to you, consider sharing it with someone who might also need these quiet hours. Leave in the comments below where do you come from before you drift away. And know that your reflections join a circle of listeners all across the world. This is not about algorithms or numbers, it is about wonder, about remembering that even as we rest, the earth continues its ancient rhythm. Subscribe if you'd like to return for more nights like this. Let's begin. Learn about when the earth awakens. Eruptions explained. Chapter 1. The Sleeping Mountain. The mountain waits in silence. It stands as if it has always been there, as if its roots stretch so deep that no force could ever move it, as if its crown of stone has always touched the clouds. To look at a mountain in the quiet of evening is to feel time slow, to feel the weight of centuries pressing against the air. Travelers who pass by look upward, see its dark silhouette against the fading sky, and imagine permanence. To them, it is unchanging. To them, it is sleep made into stone. But the mountain is not asleep, not truly. Beneath its cold ridges and forests of pine, beneath the snow that clings to its shoulders, a warmth stirs. Not the gentle warmth of sunlight, but the restless fire of the earth's hidden heart. To stand here, to rest at the base of this mountain, is to stand upon layers of memory, the crust of our planet, thin as eggshell, stretched and folded over rivers of molten rock that flow unseen. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture the mountain not as a still body of stone, but as something alive. Imagine its veins running deep into the mantle, where the heat of creation has never cooled. The earth is 4.5 billion years old, and yet inside it still carries the fire of its birth. That fire whispers upward, searching for release, and the mountain feels it always. Mountains, after all, are not just accidents of stone. They are scars, uplifted from the collision of continents, from the bending and breaking of the earth's surface. To call them sleeping is to mistake patience for silence. They are not still. They are simply moving too slowly for us to notice. Imagine, for a moment, that you could see time differently, not in hours or days, but in millions of years. The mountain before you would no longer look still. Its ridges would rise and fold. Like the slow breath of a giant, valleys would deepen, rivers would carve paths through its body, glaciers would grind against its shoulders. What now seems eternal would reveal itself as motion. Always motion. The mountain is alive in time's own language, and beneath it, deep within the crust, magma collects. It is not the raging flood of fire we might imagine, but a slow gathering of molten stone, pooling in chambers where pressure builds in silence. Scientists call this magma chamber a reservoir, but it is more like a heartbeat. It waits, it pulses with heat, it gathers with patience that outlives empires. The sleeping mountain is not asleep at all. It is simply waiting for the right moment to exhale. When we look at mountains, we often think of their surfaces, of cliffs and ridges, of forests clinging to their slopes, of snow that melts into rivers. But what we rarely think about is there, hidden life below. The crust of the earth, the ground we stand upon, is astonishingly thin. In most places, it stretches only a few dozen kilometers before it gives way to the mantle. A layer so vast and hot that it moves like liquid over the ages. The mantle is where the story of eruptions begins. Temperatures there rise higher than 1,000 degrees, sometimes close to 3,000. Rock, pressed under unimaginable pressure, begins to soften. It doesn't melt completely. It becomes something between liquid and solid, a material that flows so slowly it appears still. Yet over the course of centuries, it moves. And where it moves, it carries heat upward. The mountain feels this. Its deep roots touch the mantle. Fractures in its crust form channels, invisible to our eyes, through which magma creeps upward. Grain by grain, pocket by pocket, it does not rush, it seeps, like the slow rising of breath in a sleeping chest. That is why mountains can seem eternal, because their movements belong to scales of time far larger than our own. If you could shrink yourself small enough to travel through stone, you might hear it, the tiny crackle of minerals shifting, the faint groan of rock under pressure. You might see the glow of magma far below, shimmering like a hidden ocean, its surface trembling with trapped gases. Down there, darkness and light coexist. Down there, the earth dreams. The sleeping mountain is part of that dream. Its surface forests rustle in the wind. Birds nest among its branches. Rivers carve paths along its slopes. To the animals who live here, the mountain is simply home. They do not sense the fire beneath them, not directly, and yet all their lives are shaped by it. The soil that nourishes the trees is rich with minerals from eruptions long past. The streams that carry water to the valleys trace paths carved by ancient flows of lava. Even in its stillness, the mountain is a storyteller. Every stone, every layer, is a page in its book. Think of this, every mountain that stands today was once fire. Long ago, molten rock poured onto the surface of the earth, cooling into stone. Over millennia, layers stacked upon one another, raised by tectonic forces, carved by wind and water. The sleeping mountain carries all of this history within it. To rest in its shadow is to rest in the presence of deep time. Yet humans, small as we are, often forget. We look at mountains as if they are simply scenery and changing backdrops to our short lives. But the truth is more wondrous and more humbling. Mountains are alive with hidden motion. They are reminders that even what appears most permanent is only passing through time's slow river. As night falls, the mountain seems to grow darker, its shape merging with the sky. Stars emerge above its peak, and the air cools. In this silence, you can almost hear the deep rhythms of the earth, the way heat rises, the way stone remembers. The mountain is not asleep. It is listening. It is waiting. Far below, magma continues to gather. This process is invisible, unfolding across centuries. Tiny amounts of molten rock rise from the mantle, accumulating in chambers that expand with slow insistence. Sometimes these chambers cool, hardening into new rock without ever erupting. Sometimes they swell until the crust begins to crack. Which path the mountain chooses depends on countless forces, on pressure, on chemistry, on the strength of the stone above dot, and so the mountain waits, caught between silence and awakening. To imagine this waiting is to imagine the patience of the earth itself. Human lives flicker in comparison. We measure our days in heartbeats, our years in memories. But the mountain measures its existence in epochs. Its sleep is not sleep at all, it is the rhythm of a body that moves more slowly than we can perceive. Close your eyes again. Picture the mountain in your mind, its slopes dark with trees, its ridges sharp against the sky, its summit lost in clouds. Imagine standing at its base, feeling the ground firm beneath your feet. Now, imagine sensing what lies below that vast, hidden sea of magma, glowing softly in the dark. It rises and falls, as if breathing. The mountain is not stone. The mountain is breath slowed into eternity. It is easy to think of eruptions only as moments of sudden chaos, lava spilling, ash rising, the earth breaking open. But every eruption is born first from this waiting, from this stillness, from the long, quiet gathering of heat beneath the crust. To understand eruptions, we must first learn to see the silence that precedes them. We must learn to hear the patience of mountains. In many cultures, mountains were seen as sacred, as homes of gods or spirits. Perhaps this is why, because mountains hold the mystery of fire within their silence. They remind us that power and patience can live together, that what seems unmoving can one day awaken. The sleeping mountain teaches us this lesson, not with words, but with presence. As you rest now, drifting deeper into calm, let the image of the mountain steady you. Let its silence remind you that even when nothing seems to change, there is life moving beneath the surface. Let its vastness remind you that you, too, are part of something ancient, something enduring. The fire that stirs beneath mountains is the same fire that forged the atoms in your blood, born from stars long ago. You are not separate from the mountain. You are made of the same restless matter. The mountain waits, and so do you in this moment between waking and sleep. Both of you are held in the rhythm of the earth's long breath. Both of you are alive with hidden fire. The night deepens. The stars wheel slowly overhead. The mountain stands, dark and steady, its secret warmth rising inch by inch. It is the beginning of a story of patience, of silence, of awakening. A story that has no end, only cycles. The sleeping mountain does not sleep. It only dreams. And in its dreaming, it waits for the moment when the earth will speak again. Chapter 2. Fire beneath the roots. Beneath the roots of the mountain, beneath the quiet trees and the still crust, a deeper world begins. It is a world few have imagined in detail, and fewer still have ever seen. For the ground we walk upon, solid earth that feels so thick and steady, is astonishingly thin. If the earth were an apple, the crust would be no thicker than the skin. Beneath it lies the mantle, vast and restless, a slow-moving ocean of heat and stone. This is where fire begins, not the kind of fire we know from wood or flame, but the fire of creation itself, stone softened by pressure, glowing with heat left over from the birth of our planet. To travel there, even in imagination, is to leave behind all sense of stability. Here, nothing is still. Here, rocks flow. Like rivers, though so slowly they appear to be frozen in motion. Let us drift downward together. Imagine standing at the base of the mountain once more, feeling its quiet presence above you. Then imagine shrinking into the soil, past the tiny tunnels of insects, past the delicate threads of roots that hold the forest in place. The deeper you go, the darker it becomes. Stone surrounds you, pressing in on all sides. You pass through. Layers formed over millions of years, sediments hardened into rock, volcanic flows turn solid, minerals glittering faintly as you move past. Down, always down. At a few kilometers deep, light is gone and pressure mounts. The air is no longer. With you, all that remains is rock, pressed tighter and tighter. And yet, even here, there is heat. The deeper you go, the warmer the stone becomes, until at last, after many tens of kilometers, you reach the mantle. Here, the world changes. The mantle is not liquid, not truly. It is solid rock, yet it moves like a fluid, deforming slowly over time. Picture a block of wax pressed under your hand. It does not shatter, but it bends and flows, given enough pressure and time. This is what the mantle does. Temperatures soar to more than 1,000 degrees, and in some regions, patches of rock melt into magma. These molten fragments gather, rising because they are lighter than the stone around them, drifting upward, as bubbles drift through water. This is fire beneath the roots. It is not chaos, it is rhythm. Mantle plumes rise and fall like breath, carrying heat toward the surface. Magma pools in chambers deep within the crust, invisible to us, hidden like beating hearts. Some will cool before ever reaching the open air. Some will climb higher, forcing cracks in the rock above. And some, rare and patient, will one day reach the surface, awakening the mountain itself. But for now, we stay here, deep in the mantles. Glow, close your eyes and picture it. A vast cavern with no walls, no ceiling, only endless pressure and heat. The stone here shimmers faintly, glowing red and orange, like embers buried in ash. Gases hiss and swirl in pockets, trapped for millennia, waiting to escape. The air, if there were any, would taste of minerals and iron, of stone turned to vapor. This is not a world built for us. Yet it is the world that built us. Because without this fire, there would be no mountains, no continents, no soil or sea. The mantle moves the surface of the earth itself, carrying the continents slowly across the globe. The restless energy below gives rise to volcanoes above, shaping the land, creating the ground on which forests and rivers thrive. Life itself owes its cradle to this fire beneath the roots. When we think of eruptions, we often imagine sudden violence. But the truth is more patient. Magma forms slowly, over unimaginable spans of time. A single eruption may be prepared by centuries of hidden gathering. Like water behind a dam, pressure builds grain by grain, until the barrier can hold no more. The mountain may seem asleep, but below, the story is already being written. Let us listen to that story. Scientists studying the Earth use seismographs, delicate instruments that measure the tremors passing through the planet. These tools reveal that the mantle is alive with motion. Waves of energy travel through it, bending and bouncing in ways that tell us what lies below. Through them, we have learned that magma collects in pockets, some small, some larger than entire cities. We have learned that heat flows upward in currents, like smoke rising from a hidden fire. And we have learned that beneath volcanic mountains, these chambers of molten stone lie in wait, pressing against the crust. The fire beneath the roots is not uniform. Sometimes it pulls gently, spreading without force. Sometimes it surges, fed by deeper plumes of mantle heat. In places where tectonic plates collide, magma finds easier paths upward, slipping through fractures created by the clash of continents. In places where the crust stretches thin, molten stone rises through widening gaps, creating new land. Everywhere, the same truth holds. The earth is never still. But let us return to the mountain itself. It waits above, quiet and unmoving. Snow drapes its summit, forests cover its flanks. And yet, below, magma presses upward, filling hidden spaces. At first, the chambers are small. But as more molten stone arrives, they expand. Pressure builds. The mountain begins to feel it. You could not see this pressure with your eyes. The mountain would look the same, its slopes calm, its forests green. But instruments could sense it. The ground might swell slightly, the surface rising as if the mountain were taking in a breath. Small tremors might ripple through its base, whispers of what is to come. Gases might leak into the air, faint and invisible. All signs that the fire beneath the roots is stirring, and yet it waits. This waiting can last lifetimes. Entire generations may pass without knowing the fire that gathers beneath their feet. Villages may rise, families may live and die, believing the mountain will always remain still. Only the earth remembers, and only the mountain knows the weight of what lies below. Fire beneath the roots is a paradox. It is both danger and gift. Without it, the earth would be a silent, frozen world. With it, we are given landscapes of beauty, soils rich enough to feed forests and fields, islands rising from the sea. Every eruption, when it comes, is both destruction and creation. To understand this, we must linger here, deep in the mantles, glow and see how the fire gathers. Imagine the magma chamber again. Picture it as a vast pool, its surface glowing with liquid stone. Around its edges, cooler rock hardens, forming a shell. Within it, gases collect carbon dioxide, water vapor, sulfur dioxide, each one trapped, each one pressing upward. The longer they wait, the greater the pressure becomes. And still, more magma arrives, flowing upward from the mantle below. The chamber is alive. It is the hidden heart of the mountain. Above it, the crust groans softly, too thick to break yet, not invincible. Tiny cracks form, then heal, then form again as the mountain resists the rising tide. The magma presses upward, patient and insistent. It is the breath beneath the silence. In this way, the earth holds its own rhythm. Long quiet, then sudden release. Long stillness, then awakening. The fire beneath the roots is the pulse that drives it all. And as you rest here, listening, drifting, you too can feel that rhythm. It is not so different from your own breath, the way your lungs fill, the way they empty, the way life gathers and lets go. The earth breathes in magma and exhales in eruptions. Its rhythm is slower than ours, but no less alive. So let the fire beneath the roots comfort you. It is not only destruction, it is also renewal. It is the reminder that even in silence, something stirs. Even in stillness, life waits to awaken. Above, the mountain sleeps. But below, the earth remembers. The fire beneath the roots glows softly, endlessly, shaping the story of our world. And though we may not see it, though we may walk the forests and rivers without knowing, we are carried always by this hidden flame. The earth is never still. The Mountain is never truly asleep, and you, listening now, are part of that same rhythm. The fire beneath the roots is within you. Tooth the warmth of your body, the beating of your heart, the spark of life in your cells. All of it born, long ago, from the same cosmic fire that still burns below the mountains. You are not separate from the earth. You are its continuation. Rest in that thought. Breathe with the planet. Feel the hidden fire that moves beneath us. All, for this is the truth. The mountain is only waiting. The fire beneath its roots will one day rise, and when it does, the earth will awaken once more. Chapter 3. When stone breaks open, the mountain can only wait so long. For centuries, perhaps millennia, it has held the weight of silence, cradling fire in its depths. Magma has gathered, rising in patient tides, filling hidden chambers with heat and pressure. Gases swirl within it, pressing upward, always upward, trapped beneath layers of stone. The mountain resists. Its crust bends, shifts, groans, but does not yet give way. To those who live upon its slopes, nothing seems to change. The forests remain green, the rivers clear, the summit still. Life goes on, unaware. But there comes a moment when patience reaches its limit. There comes a moment when stone cannot hold against the breath of the earth any longer, and in that moment the mountain exhales. When stone breaks open, it is both sudden and inevitable. The surface shudders, cracks spread like veins across the ground, and the pressure that has been waiting in silence bursts forth in a single release. The stillness that lasted for ages is undone in an instant. Lava surges upward, ash rises to the sky, and the mountain awakens in fire. Yet even in this awakening, there is a strange solemn grace. Let us slow down and listen to understand eruptions. We must first understand the quiet signals that precede them. The mountain never awakens without whispering first. Weeks, months, sometimes years before, small tremors ripple through the crust. These are earthquakes, too faint for humans to feel, but they mark the movement of magma as it pushes upward. The ground may swell slightly, as if the mountain were breathing in. Gases seep from vents, carrying sulfur and carbon dioxide into the air. Animals grow restless. Birds leave their nesting grounds. The forest seems uneasy. The mountain is speaking. If only we know how to listen. And then, one day, the silence breaks. Imagine standing on the slope as the first tremors reach the surface. The ground shivers beneath your feet. Stones rattle. Trees sway though no wind stirs. From deep within, a sound begins, a low rumble, like distant thunder, only deeper, more primal. It is the voice of the earth itself, rising through stone. The air thickens with a faint scent, sharp and metallic. The mountain is no longer still. The first cracks appear near the summit. Thin at first, then widening, they cut through the stone like wounds. From them, smoke rises white at first, then darker, carrying ash and gas into the sky. The pressure builds unstoppable now, and then, with a force older than history, the eruption begins. Stone breaks open, lava bursts upward, glowing red and gold, spraying into the air in arcs of fire. Ash clouds billow, reaching higher than storms, spreading darkness across the sky. The mountain, once silent, roars, but listen closely. Even here, even in this violence, there is beauty. The lava that flows is the same material that once formed continents, the same molten stone that built the foundation of oceans and mountains. The ash that falls carries minerals, that will one day feed forests. The fire that destroys is the fire that creates. When stone breaks open, it is not only an ending, it is a beginning. Let us walk closer in our imagination. Picture the lava as it flows down the slopes. It moves slowly, almost calmly, glowing with inner light. Where it touches trees, flames rise. Where it meets rivers, steam bursts skyward. Yet the flow itself is steady, like a great river of fire carving a new path. If you could stand at a safe distance, you would see that it is not chaos, but order. The liquid stone cools at its edges, forming black crusts that fold and crack as the hotter core continues forward. This is how land is built, inch by inch, as molten stone turns solid once more. Above the sky transforms. Ash clouds spread, their edges glowing where lightning dances through them. Yes, lightning born not from storms of water, but from the collision of ash particles, charged with static as they rise. The sky flashes again and again, a storm born of stone and fire. To witness this is to see the earth's breath made visible, its exhale painted across the heavens, and still it continues. Some eruptions are fountains of lava, steady and bright, their heat flowing outward for weeks or months. Others are explosive, hurling stone and ash miles into the air, reshaping the land in hours. But all share the same origin, the patient gathering of fire beneath the roots, now released through cracks in the crust. When stone breaks open, we are reminded that the ground is not unshakable. We are reminded that the earth lives. But let us not rush through this moment. Instead, let us linger. Imagine the sound of the eruption, deep and unending, like the roar of an ocean made of fire. Feel the tremble of the ground, steady and insistent, a reminder that you are standing upon something alive. See the glow of lava against the night sky, painting the clouds in orange and red. Smell the sharp tang of sulfur, the dry dust of ash carried on the wind. This is not destruction alone. This is transformation. And though it seems sudden to us, to the earth, it is simply a breath, a release of pressure, a return to balance. The mountain exhales, and in doing so, it renews itself. For what is stone, if not memory? Every rock was once something else. Lava cools to become basalt. Ash settles into soil. Fragments of eruption harden into pumice and obsidian. Over time, wind and rain wear these stones down, carrying their minerals into rivers, into oceans, into the bodies of plants and animals. The cycle continues. The fire that breaks open the mountain is the same fire that, long after, will nurture life. Think of this as you rest. The world you know, the ground beneath your home, the stones in your hands, the soil in your garden was once molten fire. Every piece of land carries this memory. Every mountain was once awake. When stone breaks open, it tells us the truth of our planet, that nothing is fixed, nothing is permanent, and yet everything is connected. Destruction is never the end. Creation is never complete. The earth moves in cycles, and we are part of them. The eruption will quiet in time. The lava will cool, hardening into black fields of stone. The ash will settle, blanketing the land. In grey, rivers will carve new paths, rain will fall, seeds will sprout. Slowly, patiently, the mountain will heal. What now seems barren will one day be fertile. Life will return, richer than before. But in this moment, as the mountain awakens, we stand at the threshold. We see stone break open, and through it we glimpse the living heart of the earth. Let this vision settle into you, gently, do not fear it. Instead, breathe with it. Feel the rhythm of eruption as a reminder of your own rhythm's moments of stillness, moments of release. Just as the mountain holds its fire until the right moment, so too do we hold our emotions, our transformations, waiting for the time to awaken. The earth teaches us patience, and it teaches us the necessity of release. The mountain roars, the sky glows, the ground trembles, and yet, in all of this, there is calm, because this is the way of the earth. This is how the planet has always lived, and how it will continue to live, long after we are gone. When stone breaks open, the earth breathes, and through its breath, we are reminded of our place in the great cycle of fire and life. The eruption fades, slowly. Hours pass, then days. The roar quiets. The lava cools, though it still glows faintly in the night. Ash drifts to the ground like snow, soft and steady. The mountain exhales one final plume of smoke, and then silence returns. But this silence is not the same as before. The mountain has changed. The land has changed. And in time, so will life upon it. The cycle continues. Stone has broken open, and through its breaking, the earth has spoken. And now, as you rest, let that truth settle into your breathing. Let it calm you. Let it remind you that change is natural, that even endings carry beginnings within them. The mountain sleeps once more, but its dream has become the land itself. When stone breaks open, the earth remembers, and tonight, so do we. Chapter 4. The ash that becomes soil. The eruption had passed, though its memory lingered in the air like the ghost of fire. For weeks, the mountain's slopes lay cloaked beneath a thick, grey shroud of ash. Villages at its feet were buried in silence. Roofs bowed under the weight of powder that had once been stone. Forests were smothered, their trees standing like statues cast in stone, leaves and branches stiff with a final breath. Rivers, once clear and alive with silver light, now ran sluggish, clogged with sediment, carrying the mountain's story downstream. At first glance, it seemed as though the eruption had ended the world. The fertile valley had become a barren wasteland of grey, where even the wind moved carefully, raising faint spirals of dust. The air carried the smell of sulphur and damp stone, a scent that clung to skin and clothing, making people feel as though the mountain had marked them permanently. It was as if nothing could grow there again, as though the earth had decided to erase life in favor of stillness. But beneath that stillness, something ancient was already at work. Ash is not simply death, it is memory broken down and transformed. Each grain of volcanic ash carries within it the minerals of deep stone, the secrets of the mountain's fire. When the eruptions scattered it across the valley, it was more than destruction, it was also the beginning of renewal. The people who lived near the mountain did not yet see it, but the soil itself had already begun to change. The rains came, at first hesitant, as if the sky, too, was afraid of the mountain's rage. Droplets fell onto the ash and disappeared instantly, swallowed by thirsty dust. But then the storms grew heavier, and the land was washed clean, layer by layer. Ash dissolved into water, carrying nutrients deep into the ground. Rivers overflowed, spreading the mountain's gift farther than its fire had reached. Slowly, what had been desolation began to soften. Out of the ruined earth, small signs of persistence appeared. A sprig of green broke through the grey crust. Then another. Moss crept over rocks, Tiny ferns unfurled from cracks, and hardy grasses pushed upward as if they had been waiting for this moment. Nature, patient and relentless, showed that even in the aftermath of violence, life would not be silenced. The people, too, began to return. At first, only the brave or the desperate wandered back into the valley, searching for what had survived. They found ruins where homes had once stood, fields buried in ash, and the outlines of paths erased. Yet they also found that the land, though wounded, was not empty. In places where ash had settled thick, they discovered a strange fertility. Crops planted there grew taller, richer, and stronger than before. What had seemed like a curse began to reveal itself as a hidden blessing. Old stories spoke of this cycle, the destruction that feeds renewal, the fire that becomes nourishment. Elders told children that mountains, though fierce, were also generous. They reminded them that the earth does not only take, it gives back, though often in ways that can only be seen with time. The ash that had once been feared became a symbol of resilience, of the quiet truth that endings carry within them the seeds of beginnings. The villagers rebuilt. Houses rose on higher ground, stronger than before, with stones chosen carefully, and wood seasoned to endure. Fields were replanted, though not all at once. Some were left fallow, allowed to breathe beneath their blanket of ash until they were ready to bear crops again. And as the years passed, orchards bloomed where once there had been ruin. Children played among trees that had sprouted from soil. Nourished by the mountain's gift, the mountain itself stood unchanged in its majesty. Though its slopes bore new scars, black ridges of cooled lava, valleys carved by mudflows, ridgelines softened by ash. To outsiders, it might have looked wounded, but those who lived in its shadow understood differently. These scars were not flaws. They were stories written in stone. They were proof that the mountain was alive, that it breathed and changed, just as they did. And so, the people came to see the ash not as a mark of tragedy, but as a bridge between endings and beginnings. It was the memory of fire transformed into the promise of growth. It was death reimagined as life. It was a reminder that nothing, not even the fiercest destruction, is ever final. The animals returned as well. Birds were the first, circling above the slopes, calling out across the valley. Then came the small creatures, the insects that stirred beneath fallen leaves, the rodents that tunneled through the soft earth. Deer ventured cautiously into the new meadows, their hooves sinking into soil rich with unseen nourishment. With each passing season, the valley filled again with movement, sound, and color. What once had been grey and silent began to pulse with life. Fields of wildflowers bloomed where ash had fallen thickest, their colors vivid against the dark soil. Red, yellow, and violet blossoms swayed in the wind, as if to declare that the mountain's fire had not silenced them, but awakened them. Bees returned to gather nectar, and the hum of their wings carried across the fields, blending with the rustle of grasses and the songs of birds. The people learned to live differently after the eruption. They carried the memory of loss, but they also carried gratitude. They knew that the mountain could destroy, but they also knew it could give. Festivals were held each year to honor both the fire that had burned and the soil that had risen from its ash. Offerings of fruit and grain were left at the mountain's base, not as a bribe, but as a gesture of respect, an acknowledgement of their shared existence. The children who were born after the eruption grew up in a world shaped by both destruction and renewal. They heard stories of the day when the sky turned black, but they also saw orchards heavy with fruit, fields golden with harvest, and rivers running clear again. To them, the mountain was not a monster, but a teacher, a reminder that life is not fragile, but endlessly persistent. Seasons turned into years, and years into generations. Each new growth was layered upon the memory of fire, just as soil was layered upon ash. Villages expanded, trade routes flourished, and songs were sung about the beauty of the valley that had risen from ruin. The scars of the eruption remained, but they were no longer feared. They were reminders of transformation, carried proudly by the land and its people. For in the end, the ash had become soil. The fire that had once taken so much had returned as abundance, and the mountain, still and silent once more, stood watch over it, all its heart of fire hidden deep, waiting for the day when the cycle would begin again. The lesson of the ash was clear. Destruction and creation are not opposites, but partners. What seems like an ending is often only a pause, a moment before something new begins. The mountain knew this. The soil knew this. And, in time, the people knew it too. And so they lived, not in fear of the fire, but in reverence for the balance it created, for they had learned, through loss and renewal, that even the fiercest flame leaves behind a gift, that in the ashes of what is lost lies the soil of what is yet to come. Chapter 5. The eternal breath of earth. The mountain no longer slept. It no longer trembled with fire, nor did it crack itself apart in anger. What remained in the wake of fire and ash was breath, a steady rhythm like the soft rise and fall of a chest, like the endless whisper of a world that has never truly stopped exhaling. It was not silence that followed the eruption, nor was it noise. It was something between an eternal pulse, an invisible movement that wrapped itself around the land. The mountain had become more than stone. It had become breath. People spoke of it in hushed voices. They said the earth itself was alive here, more awake than anywhere else. At dawn, when mist curled low and lingered around the charred ridges, you could see the way the vapor drifted upward in streams, as though the mountain was sighing in relief. At night, when stars gathered in the emptiness above, the wind moved through the broken slopes in rhythmic gusts, like a sleeping beast drawing in air, then releasing it again. This was not imagination. It was not metaphor. It was real. Mountain's breath, eternal, endless, and undeniable. The villagers at the base of the mountain learned to live with this breath. They synchronized themselves to it. The farmers sowed seeds with the rhythm of the wind, scattering them when the mountain exhaled, covering them gently when it inhaled again. The old women who spun thread on their wooden wheels turned them in time with the breeze, as though weaving in harmony with the earth's lungs. Even the children, when they laughed and shouted in their games, paused for a moment when the mountain drew its long, invisible breath, as if listening to their oldest ancestor before returning to their play. It was as though the eruption, violent and devastating as it had been, had opened something deeper than anyone could have foreseen. Beneath the destruction, beneath the ruin, there had been a hidden rhythm, an unseen truth that only revealed itself when stone broke open and fire tore through. What had been dormant was now awake, and what had been feared was now revered. But this eternal breath was not only for the villagers. It was not only for the fields or the forests or the creatures who crept through the ash-darkened soil. It belonged to the earth itself, and the earth did not breathe for humans alone. Long before the eruption, the mountain had been called by many names. To some, it was simply the sleeping one. To others, it was the Great Father. To the hunters who entered its forests, It was the silent watcher. But after the fire and the breaking, no single name could contain it. For the mountain was no longer only stone and slope and sky. It was rhythm, it was song. And songs have no single name. Travelers began to arrive, drawn by rumors carried in the markets of distant towns. They came barefoot, with staffs worn smooth, from walking or astride horses whose hooves left deep prints in the softened, darkened earth. They came with prayers in their mouths, with offerings in their hands, with questions in their eyes. And when they stood at the foot of the mountain and felt the breath wash over them, cool when the mountain inhaled, warm when it exhaled, they understood. Some wept without knowing why. Some fell to their knees. Others merely closed their eyes and breathed in rhythm, as if they had been waiting all their lives to match themselves to something greater. The villagers watched all this, with a mixture of awe and quiet weariness. They had lived through the mountain's fire, through the black rain of ash that choked the rivers and made their children cough in the night. They knew what it meant to rebuild roofs from charred beams, to scrape soil clean before planting again. To them, the breath was not only holy, it was also memory. It was reminder. They did not romanticize it, as travelers often did. They did not treat it as a miracle. They treated it as a truth. The earth destroys, and the earth renews. And between those two acts lies the eternal rhythm. One old man, named Tura, became the voice of this understanding. He had been a child when the eruption came, and his first memory was of hiding beneath his mother's cloak as the sky turned black. Now his beard was white, his back bent, his hands lined with valleys as deep as the ones carved by rivers. Yet his voice carried the mountain's steadiness. He often sat on the steps of the meeting hall, where travelers gathered to ask their questions. And when they pressed him to explain the mountain's breath, to tell them whether it was a blessing or a curse, he only smiled and shook his head. "The mountain does not bless," he said. "The mountain does not curse. It breathes, and we breathe because of it. That is all." Still, they asked, was it dangerous? Would it erupt again? Was this breath the beginning of something new, or the warning of something worse to come? "Mountain will do as it must," Tura answered. "You may call that danger, or you may call it life. But remember, every breath we take is borrowed from something larger. Even your own lungs do not belong only to you. They belong to the same rhythm." His words spread, carried not by ink or parchment, but by memory. Travelers left the village with the rhythm in their bones, the old man's words in their thoughts, and soon tales of the breathing mountain spread farther than ash had ever reached. Yet beneath all reverence, beneath all awe, there was unease. For breath is fragile. It can stop, and there were some who feared that if the mountains ceased to breathe, the earth itself would grow still. Farmers began to watch their crops with nervous eyes, as though each wilted leaf might signal the slowing of the great rhythm. Mothers listened to the sighs of their sleeping children and wondered if the mountain's exhale reached their tiny lungs. Even the hunters paused in the forest, laying their ears against the ground to make sure the earth still whispered beneath them. One night, when the moon was thin as a curved blade and the stars hid behind clouds, the breath did falter. For hours, the wind grew still. The mist clung to the valley floor, unmoving. The air became heavy, pressing down on the roofs, on the branches, on the very bones of those who slept. The villagers woke in silence, listening, waiting. No inhale, no exhale, only stillness. Panic spread like sparks on dry grass. Was this the end? Had the mountain's lungs collapsed? Were they abandoned now, cut off from the earth's eternal rhythm? Some ran to the foot of the slope, shouting prayers, tearing at their clothes. Others sat trembling in their homes, holding their families. Close, children cried, dogs whimpered. Even the elders, who had once told everyone to stay calm, felt fear tighten their chests. But just before dawn, when despair had nearly drowned them all, the breath returned. A long, deep exhale rolled across the land, warmer than fire, softer than water. The villagers wept with relief. Some laughed wildly. Others fell to their knees, pressing their foreheads into the soil. And when the first rays of sunlight touched the ridges, the breath steadied again, as though the mountain had only paused for a moment of silence. From then on, the villagers no longer took the breath for granted. They marked its rhythm with drums, beating softly in time at dusk and dawn. They carved its pattern into wood and stone, leaving spirals and flowing lines on the walls of their homes. They sang in rhythm with it, their voices rising and falling like the wind, reminding themselves and the mountain that they, too, belonged to the eternal cycle. Years passed, the land healed. Forests grew dense where ash once smothered the soil. Rivers cleared, carrying silt into the sea. Fields flourished, heavy with grain. Children who had been born after the eruption grew into adulthood knowing nothing but the breathing mountain, as natural to them as their own hearts. And still, the breath continued. It was never exactly the same, sometimes sharp and fast, sometimes slow and weighted, but it never ceased. It was like the ocean's tide, like the flicker of stars, like the turning of seasons. And those who came to witness it found themselves changed, not by any miracle, but by the simple act of breathing with the earth. Some returned to their homes and lived differently, planting their gardens in rhythm, speaking more slowly, listening more deeply. Some abandoned their old lives altogether, choosing instead to remain in the shadow of the mountain, to live where the eternal breath guided every step. And some, though fewer than most, left disappointed, unable to find the miracle they sought, unwilling to understand that the miracle was not spectacle but rhythm. For the truth was simple. The mountain did not breathe for anyone. The mountain simply breathed, and in learning to breathe with it, people discovered themselves. Centuries may pass, and the mountain may one day return to fire. It may tear open the earth again, cover the skies in darkness, scatter villages into memory, but even then the breath will not vanish. For the breath does not belong to one mountain, nor to one valley, nor even to one world. The breath belongs to the earth, and the earth never ceases. It is there in the smallest seed, waiting to break open. It is there in the oceans, pulling water in, pushing it out again. It is there in the stars themselves, born of collapse and expansion, inhaling light, exhaling darkness. And so long as someone listens, so long as someone places their hand on the soil, closes their eyes, and matches their own fragile lungs to the great rhythm, the eternal breath of earth will continue. It does not matter if it is heard in this mountain or another, in this forest or on some distant shore. The breath is everywhere, waiting. The villagers know this now. The travelers learn it, slowly, painfully, beautifully. The children are born into it, and the mountain, silent but alive, continues to breathe. And so, we return from the fire and the ash, from the trembling of the ground and the rising of the mountain's voice. We have walked through the silence of stone and into the roar of eruption. We have seen how the earth, in its timeless patience, gathers strength in secret, only to release it in sudden bursts of power, reminding us that beneath our feet lies a living force, breathing, shifting, never truly still. Eruptions are not only acts of destruction, but also of renewal. From molten fire comes fertile soil. From falling ash comes future growth. From endings rise beginnings, hidden at first, but waiting patiently, as the earth always does. When we think of volcanoes, we are not only watching the planet's restlessness, we are witnessing its heartbeat. The earth does not merely hold us, it speaks to us, reminding us that change, however violent, is part of the rhythm that sustains life. And as you close your eyes tonight, remember that even in the darkest depths, even in the silence after fire, the earth continues to breathe. Its story is vast, its cycles eternal, and in that continuity there is comfort. Nothing truly ends. Everything transforms. Thank you for joining this journey through firestone and sky. May the earth's story remind you of resilience, of patience, and of the quiet strength that rests inside all things. Good night.